Senator Bernie Sanders is doing what is long overdue. So he is introducing legislation to not only reduce the cost of prescription drugs in the United States, because as you all know, we pay more than any other country when it comes to medication. And besides reducing the cost of prescription drugs, he's also attempting to curtail the power that pharmaceutical companies have over the United States. So Alexander Kaufman of the Huffington Post explains Senator Bernie Sanders plans to propose a new rule Monday that would require pharmaceutical companies to charge fair prices for drugs developed with taxpayer-backed research. The rule, introduced as an amendment to the 1938 Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, would force federal agencies and federally funded nonprofits, such as research universities, to secure a reasonable pricing agreement from a manufacturer before granting it exclusive rights to make drugs, vaccines, or other healthcare products. The bill is Sanders' latest attempt to stop the Department of Defense from awarding drug maker Sanofi Pasteur an exclusive license to produce a Zika vaccine developed over the past year by the United States Army. The mosquito-borne virus is sexually transmitted and causes devastating birth defects. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention recorded 181 cases in U.S. states this year alone, with another 532 reported in U.S. territories such as Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Sanders' bill faces dim prospects of becoming law. The deep-pocketed pharmaceutical industry has cultivated powerful allies in both parties, despite Democrats' recently released platform taking aim at drug prices. In January, 13 Democrats joined 39 Republicans to vote down a bill designed to lower prescription drug prices. Among them was Senator Cory Booker, a rising star in the party with potential 2020 presidential ambitions, who said during an NPR interview last month that he put a pause on fundraising from drug companies because it arouses so much criticism. He later joined onto a joint effort with Sanders to support the import of lower-cost prescription drugs from overseas. So to me, this legislation is just common sense. There's really no reason to oppose it unless you're just a shill for the pharmaceutical industry and have been bought off, because if there's only one company that has the exclusive rights to manufacture a particular drug, then we need to make sure we do everything to prevent them from extorting consumers and even extorting governments, because we've seen from various reports that Big Pharma is literally trying to blackmail governments, and they're basically saying, look, if you don't accept the cost increase that we are imposing on you, then we're just not going to sell you the drug, and your citizens who need it will die. So that's basically the way that they're playing this game. So if we can curtail the power that they have, then we should be doing that. And really, having the ability to import drugs from not just Canada, but even Mexico would be a game changer for people who depend on these drugs. But look, don't take my word for it. So David Sirota of the International Business Times reports that CBO estimates that the change would in total reduce federal government drug spending by more than $6.8 billion over 10 years, including a reduction of $5.1 billion in direct spending and roughly $1.7 billion in increased revenue. Under existing law, drug makers are permitted to produce pharmaceuticals abroad and then import them into the United States, where on average, they charge Americans the highest prices for medicines in the world. However, while drug makers themselves are allowed to import medicines, current law prohibits U.S. consumers and pharmaceutical wholesalers from doing so, even when the same medicines are sold at much lower prices abroad. So this is huge. This is really huge, and it's absolutely something that we need to pass. But of course, I'm sure that you won't be surprised to know that there are not just Republicans, but also Democrats who are currently trying to fight Bernie Sanders on this particular bill. And the last time the government intervened to try to curtail the costs of prescription drugs, George H.W. Bush was president, so that was a very long time ago. And towards the end of Clinton's last term in office in 2000, when Democrats proposed the bill that would actually allow us to import drugs from other countries, like Bernie Sanders did, Bill Clinton decided to kill it. And can you take a guess at what his reasoning was? Well, we can't import drugs from Canada, because how are we going to know that, they're safe? We can't sacrifice our stringent regulatory standards for lower prices. That's the argument. Sorry, but I don't believe that Canada's regulatory standards are less stringent than ours. If anything, they're probably better. So look, this bill is long overdue, and I really want you guys to do something here. I want you to pay attention to the politicians that support it and don't support it, because I would argue that, it's probably the case that if they don't support this bill, it's because they've taken a large amount of contributions from pharmaceutical companies, both domestic and international. So again, I want to emphasize that there's no good reason to oppose this bill unless you've been bought off, unless you are a shill for the pharmaceutical industry. So in proposing this bill, Bernie Sanders isn't just fighting for us, but he's really making a lot of Republicans and Democrats show their cards. Who do you side with? Well, Democrats before, shamelessly enough, like Bill Clinton, they proved that they are with the pharmaceutical companies that are screwing us over and extorting us and blackmailing governments. But now we're paying attention more so than ever before. So if Democratic senators and House members oppose this legislation, and Republicans do, we'll know where you stand, and best believe we will be doing everything we can to kick you out of office.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.